Hey YouTube, welcome to Trevor's Vinyl World. I just got off work. I'm rocking a Nirvana shirt today. I figured it's Sunday, February 22nd is my birthday. So I just wanted to talk about one of my favorite music artists of all time. I figured, hey, it's my birthday. I'll pick something I really like. And if they would have stayed, if the core would have stayed together, Axl Rose, Slash, Izzy Stradlin, Duff McKagan, Steven Adler, I'm not sure about that just because he definitely struggled with drugs. But if the core Guns N' Roses would have stayed together for years and years, they would have been my number one. But today I'm going to talk about Nirvana and mostly Kurt Cobain. I know they only were around for 3 or 4 years that I was aware of them. But I don't have the anger for Kurt Cobain the way that I still have anger for Axl Rose. So I think Nirvana is one of my favorite bands of all time. I genuinely wish that, things would have played out differently for Kurt Cobain. I just really like the mixture of darkness, but also he was just a very genuine, nice guy. He was always supportive of women's rights. Nowadays, he would have been loved by even the LGBTQ community. He was very ahead of his time when it came to like people's rights, and I just thought he was an interesting guy, very thoughtful, very smart, down to earth. He never had money before they struck it big. I mean, he pretty much was homeless when Nevermind came out. It's just an amazing story in a way. A guy that he's like a left-handed guitarist that wasn't even a great guitarist by any means. And some would argue that their lyrics are weird. There's no argument there, but some would say their lyrics weren't that great. I beg to differ. I think there's a lot of different layers. If I write something, you might take it one way and then someone else might take it another. And I think Kurt Cobain's lyrics definitely, could be interpreted different based on who's reading them. But no, he was just a guy that I was always fascinated by. He just had that look of a rock star. He just very captivating guy in a lot of ways. And he did not like the limelight. I think he would have preferred Nirvana to not be as big as they were. He did really look up to the Beatles. So, some would argue that he did want the fame, or maybe he wanted it, and then once he got a taste of it, he was like, you know what, I just want to live in Aberdeen, Washington, and have more of a, not such a crazy life. But anyways, but no, I just wanted to talk about him a little bit. It is sad. He left behind, when he did his thing and checked out, he left behind a daughter, and I believe he was still married to Courtney Love. But it's just really sad. But also, I just have always loved their music. And to this day, over 30 years later, since he passed away, I still not only listen to Nirvana songs, but I buy their albums. There's a lot of bootlegs out there. And some people trash the idea of bootleg albums. But I think with a band like Nirvana, it's actually perfect because there isn't really a big discography out there. You got Bleach, you got Nevermind, you got Insecticide, you got In Utero, you got the Unplugged in New York, and those are the 5 main albums. But then you got some live ones that they approved of, but then you got a whole bunch of bootlegs out there. And I don't think, Kurt Cobain would have cared if somebody like me was, buying these bootlegs. Some will say that you shouldn't buy bootlegs, or I know you can't get them on Discogs, but like on eBay, they're basically titled as imports. But I think a band like Nirvana, to really, if you're hungry for more of their work, bootlegs or imports are definitely a way to go, because there's a lot of them out there, and they're not that expensive. They're actually going up in value. I would say that, if you buy one of their bootlegs and it's 40 or 50 bucks, I think a couple years from now it'll actually be worth more, because I know I started buying their bootlegs, a couple years ago, and you could get them for $20 or $30, and now Nirvana bootlegs are easily 50 bucks, because there's the demand for it. They're not going to release any more new material. It isn't like, Tupac, where after he died, they kept releasing more albums because the guy just wrote a whole bunch of music. I think Nirvana is at the point where there isn't going to be any more water coming out of that well. So I think bootlegs are the way to go. And some people would disagree with that, and they have the right to do that. But I just always liked Kurt Cobain, and he was just an artist that always captivated me. I still, one day, hopefully when I have like a record store, I'd like to have some paintings that are like, pictures of Kurt Cobain. Obviously a lot of other artists too, but he just always was a very captivating figure. He wasn't the stereotypical rock star that had on like leather and makeup and wild hair. He was like rocking a sweater and, have it like almost like a guy in the park who's having a cigarette and an acoustic guitar, and just kind of a different kind of cat. But I just always liked him. I think when he passed away, I was like 14 or 15 years old, and it really hit me hard for a month. I've been lucky enough that I think back then I hadn't really experienced losing too many people that I knew, that had died. And obviously I never knew Kurt Cobain, but in my heart I felt like, I always rooted for the guy. I always, like, even back then I read books about him. I just was a huge Nirvana fan. And another point I just wanted to quickly make is, like, some people just don't get that a lot of their lyrics and songs that sounded like they were rape songs or whatever, they were actually anti-rape songs. Like, he literally has a song, Rape Me, but like, I think the whole point of Kurt Cobain was trying to show people, like basically he was pro-woman, he was pro women's rights. So I think sometimes people took his messages the wrong way. I just think he was a great guy, and it's really sad. I think, some people turn to heroin for different reasons, and I have read that he had really bad stomach ulcers, and obviously that's no excuse to start doing heroin. But I do think that there's a lot more to his story than what a lot of people realize. And I just wish that it would have turned out different for him. But at the same time, I still appreciate his art. And on my birthday, I just wanted to think of someone that I always liked. And even though he kind of had a darkness to him, he just always makes me smile. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Kurt Cobain, and I'm going to enjoy my birthday. And until next time, everybody have a good one. Bye.